Hey everybody, hope everybody's doing good and kind of getting back into to somewhat of a normal routine. As things start opening back up and all, I told Callie it's just nice to be able to go sit down at a restaurant, have somebody wait on me instead of me having to clean everything up or her cleaning things up or whatever. So again, that's just a nice feeling. It was of course a nice feeling to be able to get back into church last week. We went to the early service. I told her to sign us up for the 8 o'clock service. I thought she may kill me, but she didn't know that. Definitely a little bit of a different feel on that with folks being a lot distant and all that. But again, maybe we're just a few weeks or months away from getting back to the real normal. The phrase "new normal" it's just starting to get me, so I'm calling it the real normal. Um, I want to thank Key again for letting me do this. Thank Callie for helping me out with the technology side of it, and the Lord for opening my mind to some things that I haven't necessarily thought of before as deeply as probably what I should have. I promise I'm not going to go near as long as I did last time. I'm going to dive right into this. Guys, if I'm shiny on this part of my head, forgive me on that. The sun's beaming into my porch right now, so just forgive me for that. Y'all want to dive in with a quick opening word of prayer and then just jump right in. Father God, thank you for the opportunity that we have to jump into your word and allow us to get everything that you would want us to get out of that. Thank you for allowing things to start opening back up and shepherd us all through this tough time. In your name I pray. Amen. So, y'all, the text we're in today is Mark chapter 6, verse 1 through 6. I'm going to start just by reading that really fast. Jesus left there and went to his hometown accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. Where did this man get these things, they asked. What's the wisdom that has been given him? Where are these remarkable miracles he is? What are these remarkable miracles he is performing? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son, the brother of James and Joseph, Judas and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us? And they took offense to him. Jesus said, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives, and in his own home. He could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. So even though it's only 6 verses, a lot to unpack as we kind of start this. So I'm going to set a little scene right here real quick. A few of the things I read, one of the first things that popped out when I was reading the commentary that Keith sent me is that the commentary sent me said that Nazareth this time had between 100 and 150 people as far as permanent residents in there. I saw a few other sources that said it could have been up to 500, but I don't care if it's a town of 100 people or a town of 500 people. I don't even know if I've ever been to a town of 100 or 500 people, and so that is an unbelievably small town. Me and Callie are from Geneva, and Geneva's got about 4,300 people in it, and so I know how tight and all that can feel. So I can only imagine the place that Jesus grew up in, and certainly when you go back to your hometown, people I think have a hard time. We'll unpack this a little bit later on, but have a hard time of moving you from what you were as a kid to what you are now. Obviously, especially someone as well known as Jesus was at the time. So again, Nazareth is small. It's about 25 miles from Capernaum. So he wasn't moving maybe a very far distance because he was moving on feet at the time and all that stuff. As far as, again, just to keep moving on how small Nazareth is, there actually wasn't a physical church that we've been able to find there until the 4th century. That's just kind of an amazing thing for me to think of, that it took 300 plus years for the town where Christ was born at to even have a physical church in it. Of course, we do know it has a synagogue in it from the text or whatnot. That's just amazing how small of an area that was. So certainly had all the benefits of being from a small town to where everyone knows you, but as this passage points out, also all the negative parts of it that everyone knows you. So go and break it up, guys, basically into 2 sections, verse 1 through 3, and then 4 through 6 on that side. So verse 1, again, left there being Capernaum, went to his hometown accompanied by his disciples. This is kind of our transition from where we were, again, him being in Capernaum to his hometown. This part is really important. His disciples are here with him, so all that's about to happen, his disciples are seeing firsthand right there. A lot of commentators say that this is the prepping or the preparing of the disciples to actually go out and feel the rejection that they will feel. And so almost like Jesus wanted to get them ready and say, hey, listen, these folks rejected me. You're going to get rejected, as we'll see in the upcoming verses here in Mark. Just y'all be ready for it, and how that rejection was going to come. Again, I don't know about you, but if someone was sending me out to do something, and I saw them get rejected on it, I would at least feel a little bit, okay, all right, maybe it wasn't just me, maybe it's just, people are going to reject, and that's okay. And of course, that certainly talks to us in our world now. So verse 2 is just Christ talking, or rather him teaching in the synagogue, and then a little bit of their reaction in it. So one of the commentators that I heard speak on this gave this really long, elaborate, kind of in-depth thing of the culture of what the rabbi would do when there was a visiting rabbi. I'm not going to bore y'all with that part of it because it was a little bit boring, to be honest with you. But anyways, we do know that whoever that local rabbi was at least acknowledged that Jesus was a good teacher, whether that had been from the miracles he had heard about, or maybe they taught beforehand, or whatever. He at least acknowledged him as a teacher, so allowed him to go up there, read and teach. So we don't know exactly what he taught. We do know their reaction, so I think we can kind of piece that together pretty good. I think that Jesus's message can kind of be summed up pretty simple. Repent, the Messiah is here, and I'm the Son of God. I'm the one that, again, from the Jewish perspective, that you guys have been waiting on. And of course, we can definitely see their reaction to that, of rejection and scorn for him. The word amazed right there, where it says, and many who heard him were amazed. I'm going to butcher this word, so y'all forgive me, because I do not speak Greek. I barely speak the King's English, so I'm going to try my best at this. The word for amazed there in Greek is ekaplezo, which means blasted or hit with, most commonly used for like when you were sailing, if you hit with a good force of wind real fast. John MacArthur in his sermon says, blew their minds. I kind of like that because it's very 21st century. So whatever he said to them blew their mind on that part of it. Again, going a little bit on into the verse, and then also into verse 3 on this part. It's where they're rejecting him, which we'll get into a little bit more. When they said carpenter, that was meant as a look down upon thing for his lack of formal teaching. They would have known that. They would have simply known that because he'd been 31 or 32 at this time. Well, he left there when he was 30, so there's not too much time where he could have got a bunch of formal teaching. That's probably where, oh my gosh, where did he get all this wisdom from? It's probably, that's probably the guy that installed my door or whatnot. Mary's son, every single commentator I listened to or read said that the belief is that Joseph is dead here, but I think that part of isn't this Mary's son, even if the father was dead in that culture. And if you think about it, also in our culture too, a lot of times your reference to your father, so like obviously the name Johnson is John's son, on that. And so for them to say, isn't that Mary's son, instead of isn't that Joseph's son, even if Joseph was alive or dead, was an insult to him, calling him an illegitimate child, and kind of a self-righteousness from their perspective, saying, oh, you were born in sin anyway, why should I listen to anything you have to say? His brothers and sisters, if you're from a small town, you may get this part of it, are mentioned there probably just, if nothing else, to shame them. At this point in time, it's understood that none of his brothers and sisters believe. They will believe later after the resurrection, I believe, Pentecost. But again, at this point, none of them believe is kind of how we take it. So again, probably just to shame them. They would have already gone out with Mary trying to bring him back home. So again, probably just further shame on that part. And again, they took offense to him. So 4 through 6. For again, Jesus says, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives and his home. I don't know about you guys, but there's a group of people that I don't ever want to be rejected by, and that would be my immediate family. My mother, my father, certainly Callie. I don't ever want to be rejected by that group of people. So I can only imagine the very human feeling that must have given him that sadness and kind of isolation. Of course, his community, full of unbelief as well, just had those hard hearts and would not do that. So they saw and did not believe. That's one thing that Pastor Paul has brought up 2 or 3 times as we've gone through Mark is that the idea that some people have in our. And I'm sure it's always been a thing. We know it's always been a thing because Thomas wanted to do it. Thomas said, "I won't believe that he's risen until I can put my fingers in his nail, in effectively the nail holes." And so, you know, that if people could see the miracles or hear Christ teach, then I would believe and all this kind of stuff. Well, that clearly is not true for these people on that part of it, and so it's kind of hard to imagine that someone could seek him then and they still would probably have the same feeling towards it, which we'll kind of unpack in a moment. Verse 5, simply, you know, he could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. One of the commentaries I read said that's probably kind of a clumsy translation from the Greek to the English. Probably should be he would not do any miracles there, because this is not a power problem. This is a purpose problem. Again, if you don't believe, then why should I have this power to be shown to you anyways? Again, Jesus didn't do anything that did not have an established purpose behind it. One thing I had Callie read over my notes that I keep looking at here yesterday, and she said, "What do you mean by this part?" It says, "Amazing to me how used Mark is to healing, or how used to he was hearing about it." John says at the end of his gospel that if you could write down everything that Jesus did, it'd fill up all the books in the world. And so it's almost like he kind of does that part in passing right here. Is he could not do any miracles there. Oh yeah, by the way, he did he did lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them, not only to show that he had the power, but again, it's almost like Mark's doing that in passing because he was so used to hearing, and he healed this person, and he healed this person, and he healed this person, and he healed this person here. So again, I don't know if I'm accurate in that, but it just kind of feels that way to me. At least the first part of verse 6 is going to be in our passage here. He was amazed at their lack of faith. As we know, that it says that Jesus was only amazed 2 times here, and then also at the faith of the centurion when he was being crucified right before his death. That word amazed right there, again, another Greek translation here. I'm going to really butcher this word, so forgive me on that part. The Greek word here is thaumametso. They say that the Z right there is actually meant to be a T, and I can't pronounce it as a T because I'm looking at it as a Z right there. But it means astonished or looked on with wonder. That in particular word for amazed is used about 30 times in the New Testament. Every time but those 2 that I've mentioned before, it's used to describe how people saw Jesus. One thing that kind of really stuck out to me right there that I'd forgotten about is that Pilate, when Christ stood before him, was this kind of amazed. He looked on him with wonder, couldn't quite figure out the whole situation there. One brief comment, or one commentary I read that I told myself I was going to mention was, it is amazing how Jesus is never said to be amazed at the creation, or he's never amazed at people's sin or anything like that, because he would have known that kind of stuff, and he was there at the creation, laid the foundations of the earth, and certainly knew the hearts of people. He was never amazed at that, but he was amazed at unbelief in this situation and belief in that situation. So that really stuck out to me as I was trying to thumb through some people's thoughts on this topic. So going on into the book now, so on page 34, I'd actually listened to this sermon before I read the passage again, and then I picked out this sermon. I actually already read this or listened to this sermon right here that these notes are from, so that was just kind of I guess a good thing right there. But middle way down the page is John MacArthur says unbelief does 4 things. It obscures the obvious, elevates the irrelevant, assaults the messenger, and then spurns or rejects the supernatural. Just kind of, again, unpack that part of it a little bit. Obscures the obvious. That was the one that really, of these 4, that really stuck out with me. Kind of underline this. This is the nature of unbelief. It will go everywhere but the truth. It will go everywhere but to the reality or to the obvious. And so it's amazing that these guys were, that these guys were throwing all these different things at him instead of just doing the obvious thing of belief. There's a lot of different things that you could have thrown out, just depending on what Jesus was teaching at him. The most obvious would have been belief. You got a guy up here that you know. I mean, it's very reasonable to think that some of these people may have known some of the people that he had healed, certainly some of the people that had seen him and heard him. and you're hearing all these things from these people. Then you turn around and you see the guy, you know him from the time he was a kid. Isn't the obvious thing to just straight up believe instead of, again, scoring him and throwing all these things at him? And so again, that really, really, really stuck out to me. Elevates the irrelevant. Again, they're spending all this time attacking his family, so rejecting him wholesale, and now they want to attack him by attacking his family. I think that in the culture that we're in, so many people do that part of it, is they pick out these irrelevant things that are in the gospel, and they may not be totally irrelevant, but to the who is Jesus to you, to that part of it, they're irrelevant. Like, it's not irrelevant that he was from a small town that hardly anybody had ever known of before. And probably nobody ever would know if it wasn't for the Son of God being born there. Assaults the messenger. Certainly it was going to be to where it assaulted him all the way to where it was going to be death on the cross, as well as all the disciples on that part of it. But that it scandalized them. It was absolute blasphemy in their minds that he would claim to be God, the Son of God. This was scandalous to them, and that was their big stumbling stone. 1 Corinthians talks about that was the stumbling stone, that in their minds they couldn't, from a Jewish perspective especially, they couldn't get over, oh, I've done all of these things my entire life, that's how I'm getting there. It's not just belief in this guy over here. And again, that rejection eventually turned into assaulting him in a form of crucifixion. So it spurns or rejects the supernatural. Again, kind of like I'd already said, it's not a power problem here, it's a purpose problem. The purpose of the miracles is a test to the truth. If you reject the truth, why do the miracles on that? Again, pretty straightforward, pretty simple on that part. I'm going to hit just two of the questions real quick that I just kind of pondered a little bit. It's going to be the first one and the last one. It says, why might the people in Jesus' hometown have resented him? I just put that they couldn't come to grips that a guy from a place like that was the Christ, and that to kind of further do that would be that they wanted this big time, a lot of commentators will call it a political savior who's going to ride in, and eventually, of course, Christ will ride on the white horse, but not this time around. They wanted that. Guys would come in there and beat the Romans and all that, and it was like, first of all, nobody's going to do that from this small of a place, something like that. Certainly not this guy that worked with his hands his whole life and really had no formal education beyond what a normal Jewish kid would have. And then the last question, it says, do you sometimes display amazing lack of trust in Jesus? To be honest with you guys, I think I do that every day. I was really young when I heard this, but it's always stayed with me, is that every time that you sin, what you're actually doing is you're telling God, you're saying, you know what, I've got this, I know better than you, I'm going to go do this my way. And so, again, I think that is the ultimate lack of trust, to say, you know what, I know you're eternal, I know you want special form, but I got this, I'm going to go over here and do this part of it anyways. And so, something I haven't really pondered on too much in a while, but this part made me do that. So a few final thoughts I'll close out with, y'all end us in a word of prayer, is even in all the unbelief, the power of Christ is still there. So John MacArthur starts out his sermon with this about 5 or 6, 7 minute long deal about how powerful unbelief is. And then he kind of goes through everything, and at the very end, and at the very tail end of his sermon, goes into a little bit of a talk on how powerful belief is. So unbelief comes from the world or comes from Satan, but belief comes from God. And so belief is more powerful than unbelief. Again, that in that sea of unbelief of those people, that there were still a few people that did believe. I think it's a growing thing in our world. That the sinner will ultimately be held responsible for their unbelief. Again, Jesus was baffled at their unbelief in that, showing us that again, that he, I guess we'd call it, tried his best in that part. And again, those hearts were just too hard towards what they were saying, probably mostly just from being self-righteous and saying, this guy's from a small town like me, he can't do the things he's talking about on that. So again, that was Mark 1 through 6. I told you I wouldn't run as long as last time, 6 verses versus 20 verses, a little bit easier to go through that part of it. I'm going to close this out with a quick word of prayer real fast. I hope everybody has a good Memorial Day weekend. Again, maybe we'll be getting closer to getting back to normal and be able to see everybody physically soon on that. So I'm going to close this with a word of prayer. Father God, thank you for your son who came and was rejected by his own with your purpose in mind for our salvation, Lord. Just let us know that Christ was rejected. We're going to be rejected by the world in some parts, but that we should just keep pressing on, Father. That should give us the faith to keep going. Ultimately, that salvation is up to you, that our job is just to be the spread of the seas, and we thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of your kingdom plan. Lord, keep us moving forward with this virus that has been going on, and hopefully let us all get back together soon. Keep us safe throughout the weekend, and as always, let your will be done. And thank you for your son Jesus who died on the cross. Thank you. Amen. Guys, thank y'all. See y'all soon.